We are live now, ma'am.
Okay.
So thank you so much, ma'am, for joining in our Let's Talk. So let me tell the viewers that Indrani ma'am is the director of Autism Society of West Bengal. She has started play therapy first. So we now, as the play therapy is famous now in everywhere. So Indrani ma'am has started this play therapy. Welcome so much, ma'am. And thank you so much for coming for Let's Talk so that we can discuss about your journey as well as we parents need a lot of advice and seek your guidance also, ma'am. So
Mm.
thank you, ma'am. So let me tell you about Let's Talk. It's a program initiative started by Awam, wherein every Sunday at around 7 p.m. We talk with parents, siblings, grandparents, as well as some professionals also regarding our journey and regarding how to make a good and for our kids, a good
Mm.
journey for our kids. Okay, ma'am. So here, ma'am, can you please briefly tell us about your journey from graduating from UK and then Autism Society? We all need to know, ma'am.
Well, it wasn't anything startling. I mean, what happened was that I did spend quite big part of my life abroad. That was in the UK. That was partly because of my father was there. But I married and started living in India. And anyway, when Amitabha was born, there was nothing that we thought was odd or different about him. But as he became around about 2 years, we began to suspect that there were some differences. And at that time, I was not living in Calcutta. We were living in a small town just outside Calcutta. And that's when I began to notice that he was different from other children. And he wasn't playing like other children. Um so I kept asking why, and I kept going to doctors, and I got all kinds of theories. And at that time, I think there just wasn't enough knowledge about autism,
Yeah.
and so he was misdiagnosed as having ADHD, and then it came to intellectual impairment, and then it came to uh, uh, all kinds of schizophrenia. That was one of the other diagnoses he got. So, but in my heart of heart, I knew it wasn't any of that. It just wasn't matching to what the professionals were telling me at that time. Then the second child came along, and Amitabh, I think, I won't say his behavior problem was getting worse. I think he was finding it very difficult to cope, and I was not understanding what was going on with him. I wasn't being a very supportive mother. I thought he was just a very naughty, and that's what everyone told me. I'm sure all the parents have gone through this, that your relatives tell you no, that your child is just naughty. He
Need
needs
to,
he
yeah,
needs to be disciplined. You
yeah.
are pampering your child. So that kind of talk everyone said, even the closest relatives said. And then we decided again the same thing of going here and there. And Amitabha kept asking me, why do you take me to places? There's nothing wrong with me. Why are you taking me to doctors? There's nothing wrong with me. So anyway, we did get him in Bangalore, and we were very lucky because the doctors and the psychologists at the time who saw us were very good. And so anyway, we went primarily for Amitabha, but when we were being interviewed about Amitabha, most of it wasn't matching with Amitabha. It was matching with the younger child. So the doctor said, "You get the younger one registered too." So you had both of them registered, and then they both came down with an diagnosis of autism. It isn't that I wasn't like shocked. I always knew that there was something. I think both of us knew because we could see the difference with other children. Even though Amitabha could talk so much, in some areas he was way ahead of the other children, but in a lot of simple areas he was way behind.
Okay.
But he was 14 when he got his diagnosis, and the younger child was 4. Costa was 4. So, and there was not much in terms of services. So, we were referred to various places in Kolkata, And actually, we kind of went not with the purpose of getting diagnosis. We said, let's go on holiday. We'll go to Bangalore, and then we'll go to Uti, and then we'll go to this, and let's see what happens. So Dr. Shobha Srinath was a person who was overseeing us, and she said, you must finish the holiday, because the boys know you're going to go on holiday, you must finish it. So both my husband and I kind of went through the holiday. I got to go back on that trip again because I don't remember any of it. Okay. So, so we went through that, came back to Calcutta, and where we were referred, to be honest, there was nothing much services. We got some doctors who gave us some good advice, but in terms of, things like how to teach self-help skills, but I really felt they didn't tell me, they did not understand what difficulties the boys were going through. That is for me, that has always been a marker of what, when you talk to professionals, when you talk to someone who says, look, I've got this therapy and blah, 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 is that when they talk about your children, is it matching with what your child is about? So invariably it was not. What they were saying was not who they were. I could not see my sons there. So, we were still living a little outside Kolkata, in a place called Rupnarayanpur, which is a small industrial town, very small. There's one main road. The only good thing is that because it was such a small place, Amitabh developed a lot of skills. He could cycle, he would learn to do errands and all that. And there was a lot of place for the boys to play and everything. And so there were some good things, but obviously there wasn't much support there either. So we came back to Kolkata, and I was still searching. I went to the place where we were referred to. And again, the school was not, it wasn't right what was happening. The amount of, and that school is still around. It's a special school where Costa was referred. They still do things. I mean, at that time, I knew that he was tied up. He was shouted at. I don't know if he was hit. I was not allowed to see. But I found him traumatized and upset. And I withdrew him. And I said,
He's tied up.
He was tied up, yeah. Because Kostav had speech. He could talk. He could give enough information to know that he was, something had happened. Okay. Yeah. So there were a lot of things that happened. So then I was really at my wit's end. And then I saw a notice. I went to another school, special school, which I knew was, may not take them. I went and saw them. They said, we don't take children with autism because we work predominantly with mental retardation and intellectual impairment. So I saw a notice which said, Mary Barua will be visiting Kolkata to conduct a workshop with Sandra Dawson. I saw that. I haven't a clue who they were. So I thought, okay, I saw a name of another person called Indrani Ghosh who had organized it. So I went and called her. And she said, yes, you must come, you must come. So that's when I attended the workshop. Now, why I was struck by what Mary said, I knew nothing about Mary at that time, nothing, is because when she was describing autism, it matched with what my boys were. I could understand, I could connect, and I say, yes, that's what they're going through. These are their difficulties. This makes sense. So anyway, they came again, and I kind of connected with them, and then I decided to, take the boys and go to Delhi, and I stayed there for a couple of years, trained. But I had to come back to Kolkata. My husband is here. It was just not possible for us to relocate to Delhi. So we came back, and then I thought I was working at another organization, a special school, where we tried to get something going on autism. But again, there was just not enough understanding. And now I realize that most of the students who were there in that special school had autism. But they were not willing to come up with the support system that was required. So, and then a lot of things happened. My mother became sick, and my husband was very unwell. And so I said, I can't work there. Then I started something, and I started Autism Society West Bengal as a support group. I did not want to start services because services is difficult. Yeah. So I had a couple of rooms on my ground floor, and that's where we started. We started doing play groups. We started organizing. Wait. দেখে নাও বোর্ডে লেখা আছে বোর্ডটা দেখো yeah we will be interrupted from time to time
yeah it's okay
I know
that
so
is
anyway
the way.
yeah so that's how we started. It started with just a couple of kids and their mothers coming along, and we had games, mostly played games. And then people started coming to me and saying we wanted one-on-ones, and then we started in that way. So we got ourselves registered in 2002, end of 2002. And in 2003, we realized that we needed to have something a little bit more regular than meeting 3 times a week or 4 times a week or once a week, something a little bit more regular. So that's when we started the school, Dikshan, special school. And then more people came to the organization, more and more people got involved. And a very big support in my life was a family friend. I mean, both the families are very close friends. Rama Basu, she still is a huge rock, and she's not a parent. And that's why I advise everyone to have a non-parent by your side, because she has an absolutely sort of like a regular life, and she's been really a pillar of strength. So she joined, and then other people came in and also they joined. Mrs. Tapati Ghosh, she became the president, and there were lots and lots of other people who joined. And then eventually younger parents started coming in. We started different services like parent training. Then we started early intervention. Then we started a school readiness program. Then obviously, as our children grew older, we started a vocational unit. And more we got involved in other things like lobbying, talking to the government, all kinds of areas we began to get involved in. And we were still struggling. Then we decided to expand, but we still don't have our own place. We're from a rented place. And at that time, the rented place was very small. And then we moved to a bigger place. And there's been lots of barriers, financial, funding, everything. There's been a huge struggle. And there's a huge lack of understanding of NGOs in our country. Even amongst parents, they think you're an NGO, you're flooded with money. They think money is pouring in like everything. And that's just not true.
Yeah, that's
especially in disability, and especially with a disability like autism. Money comes in where the donors see, okay, I give money, these people get educated, they go on to have regular lives, Yeah. I give money, they are suffering from some illness and they get better. I give money, they come out of poverty, and I can say, yeah, I achieved something. But with disability, although money does provide a lot of improvement, a lot of people with autism are going to school, finishing their education, they're all moving on with their lives. But there is this perception that if I put money into this, then nothing much will come of it. So it's very difficult to convince people to give money. So it's been a struggle with that always. And, parents don't understand how difficult it is to get the funds. They think we must be rolling in money, and, there's a lot of misunderstanding. So that's how it's been with that's how we've kind of evolved. We're still evolving. I think we are moving more towards adult services. We're thinking more and more of adults and how we can provide the kind of support adults will need. And so we're kind of now moving forward to that. We're thinking about employment. And I feel that's going to be the biggest challenge for many organizations like us, or even bigger organizations like us, and smaller ones coming up. But running organizations and NGOs have become, I think you must have realized too, has become very difficult over the years. Yeah, because all the laws have changed, the ways of funding have changed. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the future holds, but it is going to be a huge struggle. So let's see how it works.
Yeah, that's true, ma'am. There are struggles, there are hurdles in every way. So, ma'am, I just want to know that what is your advice for the parents whose kids have just diagnosed under the spectrum and who were in that stigma that why me and all. So, what are your advices?
Well, if you cannot accept that your child has autism, autism won't go away.
Hmm.
It's not going to go away. And autism isn't end of the earth. It's not a disaster. Having a child with autism is definitely not a disaster.
Yeah, that's
There are lots of ways you can support and help your child, and you can help him develop. And so many children that are now I see who we would categorize as being severe, but they have their own way of learning, and there are certain areas they really do well, very well in. I'm not saying they become these exceptionally with special skills, but I think we need to be aware that some children are not going to speak, but they will communicate. There are some children who will speak, but limitedly, but they'll still communicate. And there are some children who will speak a lot and still have struggled, they'll still struggle to communicate. So we need to understand that. But I would recommend that if your child's been diagnosed with autism, you've got to understand that special education is a vast subject. You know, any form of special education is not going to help your child. And I think you should ask, you should try to understand where your child is struggling. It's not just about speech. Then people
That's
who,
the
oh,
main thing because
exactly.
parents early diagnosis if the child has been, then parents will go for speech only, speech therapy and all. They
Yeah,
will,
you can go for speech therapy, but you got to understand there no therapy is justified
yeah,
in hurting, scaring, or doing using any kind of aversive with your child.
yeah,
Your child cannot be, in the name of a therapy, be hurt, be scared, or be traumatized. That is, if somebody is doing that, then that's abuse. That
mm,
simply is abuse. You cannot frighten the child to speak. I mean, we still hear these terrible stories. But there are some good professionals, there are some good speech therapists, occupational therapy. Occupational therapy has improved so much in India. I cannot tell you, when I started, there wasn't anyone.
mm,
Now we have many now, like for instance, the girl we have, our occupational therapist in Sana, she points out to things that I could have done with my younger son that were not done, because there were no occupational therapists at that time, at least not in Kolkata, that that understood autism. It isn't that they weren't there, but they really didn't know enough about autism. And very often they told me, I'm sorry, I don't work with children with autism because I don't know much about it. So they are there now. You need to be very specific, and you need to ask specific questions. You need to ask, what is this therapy going to do for my child? You know, uh, and why shouldn't you ask? You should ask.
yeah,
You should
that's
things like, may I see a few sessions? You should say that. I want to
mm,
see a few sessions.
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. And what are you trying to teach him?
Mm,
Generally, I tell parents that if your life is improving by doing the therapy,
mm,
then probably, and your child is going there happily,
mm.
then probably you're on the right track. বোর্ডটা এনে দাও বোর্ডটা এনে দাও okay. So you are on the right track.
Mm.
So this just okay, I got to tell Amitabh, please don't tease him. আমি একটা পরে আমি একটু শিখিয়ে দেব. Yeah. Okay, the older one is teasing the younger one. That's why we're having this problem. Okay. So we need to, I think I'll tell, what I tell all younger parents is, if the therapist is telling you about the difficulties your son is having, and it seems to make sense to you, you say, yes, these are the struggles. And then the therapy has improved all your lives. It isn't that your child couldn't show an apple and now he is, but generally there's an improvement in your quality of life, then you are on the right track. You know, I think that's what you need to be focused on. And try to go for therapies which are what's called evidence-based. At least there is some research, because I think parents need a marker. I know there are a lot of therapies that a lot of parents say are good, but when a new parent comes, how are they supposed to judge what works and what doesn't work? You know, so go for things that are research-based. Go and talk to other parents and say, look, I want to try that out. How was it? Regarding stigma, why? I mean, people who say, why us? Why not you? I mean,
that's true.
Why not?
Yeah.
So
you are strong enough that you
so,
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that you are
I mean,
strong.
it doesn't matter whether you're strong or not. I think you end up, I think most people have that resilience. But I think you just have to do, this is your child, you just have to do what is right for him. That's it. And to going into this thing of why me and all that, you're just wasting time. Better to get on with it, and you probably find that your child will improve. I think it's one of the things that really, I think makes things very difficult. Why a lot of therapies, even if they're good therapies, they don't work. It's because parents somehow take out their frustration on the child. They take out that aggression on that child, that despair, and that gets to the children, and they absorb that. And that's why it doesn't matter how good a therapist you go to, it's not going to work. You cannot put your despair, it's not that child's fault. It's happened, just get on with it, you know. And if we do, and I know we all need our space.
Yeah.
You go on.
Like therapists is doing,
tell me.
Therapists are doing their work, but parents also need to involve themselves also in the work, isn't it?
Exactly. That's why I think parents should say that I need to see a few sessions. I need to see what's happening. Like for instance, in all our sessions, parents can come and go as they want. And I think it's important that we need the therapy units to be that open, so that they can come.
So, ma'am, as we know, we have early intervention center everywhere. Like if we can go to a normal small town, also we are having a smaller early intervention center and all. So, but now, as per the kids' requirement, as per the teens' requirement, we hardly have any center where we get vocational training, like early vocational training center. Like if we can start at an early age of 6+ early vocational center, then it will be very useful for and very needful for the kids who are growing to teens or who are adult also. So so how important it is for a early vocational training?
I think it's important. I don't know if 6-year-olds would be right. I think 12, 13 is when, but the ability to work, to enjoy work.
Actually, why I am asking this, ma'am, because wherever we are going for early intervention center, they are having one age specific. Like they are taking 2+, still hardly they will stretch till 8. After that, they will say that we don't have the equipment and all. So what about 8+ kids? Where will he go? If he will not have like the basic things of the vocational courses, then the parents will take him out from the therapy center, and then they are doing their own whatever they are doing. So
I wish that vocational training was part of regular schooling.
Yeah.
I know a lot of work has been done on inclusion, but what has not been done enough is the training of mainstream teachers to take on inclusive classrooms and make it absolutely that you just have to handle. By the way, it's not rocket science.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science, teaching special children in an inclusive classroom, running it's not, doesn't take that much of an effort. It just takes sincerity and doing your work. But, our education system is regular children, even parents of regular children will tell you that in our education system, very often the teaching is not done in classes. The schools only take tests and exams. There are schools which actually teach. I've taught in schools which actually teach, because for many years I was a regular school teacher, and they do teach. But okay. So what happens is that a lot of you cannot have vocational units specific to disability throughout the country, like in every village and all that. So there must be, I wish there were, like it's part of the regular teaching vocational skills, because I think even regular children would benefit from it. Learning to work. Like some schools which do include, home management skills, all kinds of things. I think it's important to do that. But if you don't have access to vocational training, home is a place you can start vocational training. You can train your child to do work. Work is something that I think right from the beginning, you need to teach your children. See, in our culture, it is not acceptable that children work in the house, like, make their own beds, take out the rubbish, do a little bit of cleaning, stuff like that. But in many cultures, it's okay. Everyone does it. Do a little bit of washing up. I think teaching these little skills is good because it will make them more skilled. It will make them be able to look after themselves better. If I can wash up my own dishes and plates, then I'm less dependent on someone. If I can make my own bed, I'm less dependent on someone. I'll give you an example. Like my younger son, he really was lagging behind in his skills, self-help skills. He suffers very badly from anxiety, and he has epilepsy too. So, and I noticed that his anxiety was getting worse. I mean, there was one couple of years ago, for a whole year, a year and a half, we went through a lot of difficulties with him. And I thought his anxiety was because of his dependence on other people. So I really worked on his independence, that he's totally got to be independent in the bathroom, in the way he eats. He's got to be independent in dressing. The more I worked on those skills, it reduced the anxiety. The more he could do things for himself. And in one of our early intervention program, a huge part of it is self-help skills, especially the school readiness program, where where 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds learn to indicate toilet, and they want their tiffin, they can eat tiffin on their own, they can take out things from their bags. And that is as equally important as communication therapy, occupational therapy, because it gives that sense of self and being able to cope. So I think if you are looking for vocational training, whatever your age of your child, it could be an adult, maybe not a child, look at simple work at home, a work that he can identify, he can complete, and he can take joy in completing it. I did it, I finished it, it's done. Especially work which is contributing to the family. So, simple things like laying the table, preparing something, preparing a part of a meal, not the whole meal, maybe part of it. I'm chopping up the vegetables, or packing the bags before you go on a trip, because all of that requires the same skill as a vocational skill. And then, of course, you need to identify what is his interest and what is his skill level. And of course, then you have to build up his skills, and so that he can have something that gives him meaningful engagement and even employment or customized employment.
So, ma'am, as a mother of two adults under the spectrum, so what is your advice for the parents, like whose kids are now in teens or adults? Uh,
Yeah, I think work, it doesn't matter if your children are older or younger, look at your network of support. Look at people who will be a support to you and your children. So look at things like your children's cousins, your friends' children. Look at people you know generally, and look at younger people. Don't just look at people of your same age, because we'll all die together. So look at younger people. If you are involved with an organization, then get involved. And I think where parents become very frustrated, and I think sometimes they become very depressed and they tie themselves up in this knot, is because they're looking for very specific kind of, how shall I say, care for their adult children, which is specific to them. They're not thinking of an overall care. You know, like you might get parents who says, I want my child to have this diet, this kind of bedroom, and this kind of toilet. Then you're isolating him. And if you expect an organization to give everyone customized, maybe there are organizations who do that. I don't know. There are. I mean, there must be. I'm suppose they're very expensive, but there are. So you need to look at organizations also where your child can fit in, will get a certain level of care and comfort and support. And don't just look at food and the size of the room. তুমি দেখে নাও আমার মিটিং এ ইপি খাবে বিকেলে খাবে মুড়িকে দেখে না বোর্ডে লেখা আছে। Then you know, if you expect that my adult son, I think parents focus on food, on toilet, on rooms, but they also need to look at who are the people who are going to be involved in their lives. Are there relatives who might look in on them? Are there friends who might look in on them? I think they forget about that, because that I think is very important, that you need to have, like, will my, will someone call him up to wish him happy birthday when I'm not there? Will someone invite him for Bhaiya Dooj or Rakhi or whatever? During Diwali or something, will someone remember them? So you need to look at that social and emotional support for them too, because that has a built-in safety, because that creates that, that safety net for your child. So I would say, look at your network of support. Look at any organizations and institutions that you may find that you can kind of get along with and work and contribute. I think what parents must realize, that nobody is going to give it to you on a platter. If you're sitting back and thinking, well, when my child is 18 or 20 or 30, I will then think about it, I'll go somewhere. There, you've got to think about it right now. Will your child need some kind of group home or residential home or something? Will my child need something a little bit more like, not so much, maybe is relatively independent, but will need support in terms of help in understanding finance and maybe emotional support? You need to work that out. It takes a lot of courage, because you are thinking about your own death also. So you need to be very brave and put your child's needs first. You need to put your child's needs first and think, okay, what does he need, or what does she need? What will give him a happy, balanced life? And what you consider may not be the life that he or she wants, like most parents. So you need to think about that and work towards it right now. I think soon, don't wait for your child to be in his teens. Start right now. I would say, because this is a country where that support system has not evolved. We don't have social services. I know a lot of people say the social services in the US or in Europe are pretty bad, but it's still there. There's something there. We have no safety net in India.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think parents in India can, or at least I think parents, we can do is be supportive of each other. I don't think we are together. I think we're a very fragmented group, especially the group for autism, by the way. Maybe the other groups are more united, but we're very fragmented. We should not get too caught up in therapies and various people who are expert in this field and get into groups and become politicized, and I don't like that therapy and I don't like this therapy. Think of the
Yeah.
bigger
Yeah.
picture. Think
Yeah.
of things like, if my child is sick, I should be able to go to any hospital, any doctor, and if I say my son has autism but he also has broken his leg, then the doctor will say, okay, then I need to talk to him in a certain way, but I should be able to treat him. The
Yeah.
doctor should not look at me bewildered and say, oh, what's wrong with him? If I go to a dentist, you see, like many parents, even I have specific doctors, specific dentists, because they know about autism. But that should be the most. Of course, there'll be few who doesn't.
Autism awareness, we need to create more.
I think this is where there has to be a role in from the government, because the government
Yeah.
cannot just pass some laws. Since we've
Yeah,
been
that's true.
independent,
Yeah.
laws have been passed, but nobody said, let's change the way we're training our professionals. Let's change the way we're training our doctors. Let's change the way we're training our nurses. Let's change the way we're training our teachers. That's where the inclusion happens.
Yeah.
Let's look at our judicial system. Let's look at the way we train our police. If accommodation is made in hospitals, in medical care, in education, in the judicial system, then believe me, the lives of every citizen in India will improve, not just for people with disability. So I think that's where we parents need to focus, and we need to ask when we go for some sort of services and when we are paying for it also. But why isn't it there? Why isn't it there? So I think we need to be a little bit more proactive rather than having, it's very nice. We have these cultural programs, we talk to each other, but what ends up happening is we're creating awareness amongst ourselves.
Among ourselves, yeah, that's the thing.
We're preaching to the pulpit, what's the point of, that's what happens with disability. We're talking to other NGOs, other NGOs that work with disability. We're not reaching the people who don't know anything about disability, but are
exactly,
they're providing something in the general public, like the police, the judicial system, the lawyers. Why don't they know about the rights of people with disability? Why do I have to go around and find a specific lawyer who knows about it? I should be able to go to anyone. They should have some idea. So there's a lot of places I think we are kind of banks, the rights that they can hold a bank account. There's still a confusion about that. Health insurance, there's still a confusion. There are these big areas. And I think unless we tackle that, lives of our children after we are gone, it will be very sheltered and has to be protected, because that support is not there. There has to be a certain level of support.
Actually, ma'am, first we need to create awareness among our family and relatives and friends. Because we somehow stop sharing about our kids to our things to our relatives also. So first, awareness is like charity begins at home. So awareness.
Absolutely, I think you need to talk about it and use the term autism.
Yeah,
I think a lot of parents don't. A lot of parents don't. But you see that your child is slightly different. Your relatives will figure out. If you don't give the name autism, then they'll give some other name, which is not very nice. And would we like that? I don't think we would like. Well, they'll use words like abnormal, odd, which is worse. And I don't believe that we should go around telling relatives, look, my son has autism, blah, blah, blah. We should speak in a very matter-of-fact manner. He has autism and maybe he doesn't want to talk now, or he has difficulty expressing this. That's what I do. I don't go into this. I don't apologize for them. And whatever, if they're not responding in a way that my relatives might want, I just say, yeah, he can't respond in that way, And I think that's important that we do that, because your relatives are also members of society.
Yeah. And they have different friends. They can also
Absolutely.
communicate that, okay, in our
Yes,
family,
yes,
one
yes.
kid is there who has autism. And autism and some this thing. So then by this way it can spread, right?
Yeah. Because if your relatives will talk to other people, they'll tell their colleagues, and it just gets, and that happens a lot, actually. Yeah, because we often get a lot of our referrals, a lot of parents, new parents come to us because other parents have told them, rather than or a relative have told them.
Actually, what happened, ma'am, like which I said every time, we are in a different world, and then we came to this world after the diagnosis of our child, right? So after that, what happened? We stopped, we stopped contacting our old friends. But if we will start contacting, and if we will continue that process, then they will also know that, okay, my child has autism, and then their relatives, their friends, everything. Like this way, we can create this awareness. And awareness is must because we are just whatever we are doing within our special needs community. We are not spreading our wings to the outer world, outside world.
No, we're not. And in fact, we don't use our rights as voters and as citizens when people come to ask for your vote. I think you should say, so what are you doing for autism?
Autism, correct.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then at least, even if they don't do anything about autism, they'll at least know about autism. So what are you going to do about it? So I think we should ask that questions, but we don't. We don't, and we tend to not demand enough. And this is somebody from the government who told me that who make up the government? Government are people from society, and they have as little knowledge about autism or disability like anyone else. Like if we want parents, how much would we have known about it? We wouldn't have. We wouldn't have gone and found out about it.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
you have to create. You have to, and he said that this. He was he's in the government, so he said that. I remember he said that you have to talk about it. You have to tell us what you want and what would help, and be specific. Don't say something like, "Oh, I want a home," but be specific. Ask for policies. Ask for things that is going to affect a lot of people. But when we approach anyone in the government, we say, oh, can you give me a land? Can you give me a building? But we don't say, change the policies, change the way things are done. I want you to create awareness. I want you to change the way you train people, like people, like doctors and like policemen, like whatever. You need to do that, training and of people has to take into account that you are dealing with a diverse population, which has diverse needs and a diverse way of supporting them. So I don't think it's difficult. It's just that, I don't know. People just have not done it. That's all, I guess.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for giving your time and sharing us about your journey as well as advising us here. Thank you so much, ma'am.
You're welcome. I enjoyed it. Thank you so much for inviting me.